Although the Super Mario Bros. Franchise appears at first to be a relatively simple platforming experience, once you begin to play more and more, you realize that things can actually get more complicated than you think, especially when it comes to level design, some of the cool interactable items, and of course the focus of today's video, power-ups. These collectibles allow Mario to transform into a different version of himself with brand new unique abilities, where today I specifically want to look at the absolute weirdest from across the series, focusing on the ones that introduce some incredibly wacky mechanics. Oh yeah, before I get started with all this, my name is Copycat, and if you haven't yet then please subscribe to my channel, hitting that bell button to stay notified when I upload new videos. The first game released in the franchise is Super Mario Bros. For the NES, which doesn't have many power-ups, especially weird ones, but I do want to look at the Magic Mushroom, mainly due to its odd name. I think we all know the function of this power-up, as it just turns small Mario into his larger, more powerful version. But you have to agree with me that the name Magic Mushroom has some obvious drug-related connotations that doesn't really seem to fit Nintendo's family-friendly image. I do get that it does magically transform you into a different size, but obviously they even felt like the name must have been weird, as in future versions it was changed to Super Mushroom instead. Up next in the Western version of the original trilogy is Super Mario Bros. 2, which of course didn't start as a title with the mustachioed man, so the way you come across power-ups is vastly different. For example, stars only appear once you've collected 5 cherries in a stage, and isn't contained within a block as it normally would be, but it still does turn you invincible, letting you defeat enemies with a single touch. How you collect the mushroom is also very different, as they can only be found in the subspace through the magic door, and when collected do turn you into a bigger version of yourself, but also add an extra heart to your life meter, while filling it up completely when you're low, which is something that's sorta different from anything else in the series, other than maybe something in Super Mario Odyssey. The final and my favorite of the original trilogy is Super Mario Bros. 3, which has a few weird power-ups I want to showcase, starting with a hammer suit, found only in a few spots in the game. This insane transformation allows you to basically become a hammer bro, letting you throw those projectiles towards your enemies, also letting you defeat almost all of them in just one hit. In this state, you're also immune to any fire-based attacks, but oddly it negates your ability to slide down hills, which is a bit strange. Another one I want to mention is the frog suit, which when worn allows you to swim much more efficiently underwater, letting you become unaffected by strong currents. However, there is a drawback, as it makes it tougher for you to maneuver on land, not letting you crouch or once again slide down hills. Up next is the true Japanese sequel, released in Western markets under the title of The Lost Levels, where there's one really unusual power-up in this entry in the Poison Mushroom. This darker version actually injures Mario if you come in contact with it, outright killing you if you're already in your smaller form. This makes this already unforgiving game even that much harder, as regular mushroom power-ups are already in incredibly scarce quantities in this title. The very first handheld game in the series is Super Mario Land for the Game Boy, which weirdly changes the Fire Flower's function, renaming it here to the Super Ball Flower. That's because when you shoot out a fireball, it bounces much more wildly off surfaces, while also allowing you to collect coins it touches along the way. This actually turns out to be a very helpful tool to use, as it can be tricky to platform in this rather rudimentary experience, so this at least allows you to easily clear the stage of any enemies. The next game up in this video is Super Mario World for the SNES, which has 2 standout peculiar power-ups, starting with the Power Balloon. Collecting this one inflates Mario and allows him to hover in mid-air. This only lasts a few seconds, and in certain instances like in the special tubular level, you need to collect several of them to continue, or else you fall into the void. The only other power-up I want to look at is Yoshi's Wings, which will attach to your Dino Buddy allowing him to fly, and will let you enter the coin heavens as a bit of a bonus, usually containing a dragon coin there. This is a super rare thing to come across, and can be seen just floating across the stage, where jumping into it is the only way to collect it. The second handheld game in the series is Super Mario Land 2, also released for the Game Boy, which introduces a power-up that's unique to the series that turns you into bunny form, hilariously by collecting a carrot. This allows you to flutter in the air for a few seconds, similar to the Super Leaf, but you're unable to use it to fly upwards. I also want to note that in this entry, the Fire Flower changes Mario into something completely different than his red and white getup. Here, placing a feather in his cap, probably only included due to the limitations of the system. Super Mario 64 that was released for the N64 in 1996 replaces the traditional power-ups with caps, which when worn gives you certain strengths, allowing you to pull off some amazing but weird feats. The wing cap gives Mario the gift of flight, letting you gain an insane amount of air, but you can only glide, then quickly swoop upwards to gain more height. This can be a bit tricky to figure out how to properly use, as controlling Mario in this state is definitely a pain at times. The metal cap is the next one you can unlock in this game, which literally turns you into metal, while making you much heavier and invulnerable to attacks. This is really the only way to press switches underwater and collect certain stars that otherwise would be unreachable. The final cap you can collect is the Vanish Cap, that turns Mario completely invisible as well as intangible. This lets you pass through certain walls, which is necessary to collect otherwise impossible stars. Super Mario Sunshine for the GameCube is a huge outlier in the franchise, as the game really revolves around the FLUDD, which lets you attack enemies in a different way, as well as platform around your environment differently. There are actually 2 unlockable nozzle attachments that change the way your move and spray works, starting with the turbo one. This lets you run at blazing fast speeds over land or sea, which is needed to access certain areas that contain some sort of item you have to collect. The rocket nozzle also can be unlocked during one point of the game, which is used to blast Mario very high up in the sky. This of course allows you to reach extremely high up spots that you usually couldn't get to, and once again is necessary to access certain areas. Picking the weirdest power-up from New Super Mario Bros. For the DS was pretty tough, as there's a few wacky additions in this 2D reimagining, but here I narrowed it down to 3, starting with the Mega Mushroom. This one allows Mario to grow to gigantic sizes and become invincible, letting you destroy usually indestructible blocks found within the stages where you become big. On the opposite end of things, there's also the Mini Mushroom, which of course if you could guess by its name, shrinks Mario, letting him enter tiny pipes and reach smaller areas. In this tiny state you can actually jump higher, but do less damage to enemies. And you can also die very easily, as here it only takes 1 hit to kill you. The final weird power-up from this game I want to mention is the Blue Shell, which turns Mario basically into a Koopa, as when you crouch you enter shell form and can spin quickly along the platforms. This lets you defeat enemies, as well as break bricks to open different areas. Although there's a few power-ups from Super Mario Galaxy I could mention, like the one that turns Mario into a bee, or even the one that turns him into a spring, I really just want to focus on the absolutely strange Boo Mushroom. This obviously turns Mario into a Boo, allowing you to become intangible and phase through walls. You will however turn back into regular form if you come in contact with any light, so you need to navigate carefully through the mansion's hallways to rescue Luigi. The second game in the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series came out for the Wii in 2007, and introduces 2 super weird power-ups in the Propeller Mushroom and the Penguin Suit. Propeller Mario form is interesting as it lets you shoot up in the air like a helicopter if you shake the Wiimote, putting you in positions to reach higher up areas on the stage. You do also have the option of either falling gently back to the ground, or ground pounding, which will perform a quick drill spin. Penguin Mario is definitely an odd addition, as you can throw ice balls at enemies that actually freeze them in place, where they then can be used as platforms or to be thrown at other enemies. In this form, you're also able to traverse much better on icy surfaces, which are usually normally really slippery. In the second Super Mario Galaxy entry, I'd have to say that the weirdest power-up is the Rock Mushroom, the one that turns Mario into a boulder so he can bulldoze over obstacles and kill enemies. This is done by shaking the Wiimote, which transforms Mario into that rolling rock form, and is really cool, but unfortunately only shows up in a few places in the game. The other power-up I want to look at that's pretty bizarre is the Cloud Mushroom, allowing Mario to walk on the platforms that you'd usually be too heavy to stand on. Also, by shaking the Wiimote, you can spawn 3 of these clouds on your screen at a time, which is needed to cross large gaps to the other side. Next up in the series is Super Mario 3D Land for the 3DS, which introduces a weird power-up in this otherwise pretty normal game in the Boomerang Flower. This literally turns Mario into a Boomerang Bro, letting him throw the projectile to easily defeat enemies, and also letting you collect items, which is its real purpose. This is tons of fun to use in this 3D environment, and I love when you're able to essentially become classic enemies playing the game in a very different way. In the third entry in the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series, released for the 3DS in 2012, there's a few gold-oriented power-ups that have been put in this game, starting with a gold block. This oddly only appears on Mario's head if you claim 10 coins out of a coin block, where you then can move around the level with them literally spewing out of your head. This serves literally no function other than giving you coins, which is a common feature you'll see in other power-ups I mentioned in this game. This includes the gold flower, which allows Mario to throw golden fireballs towards enemies, which has a greater area of effect, as well as dishing you out a large amount of coins. In the final game of the new Super Mario Bros. Sub-series that was released for the Wii U, there are only 2 power-ups I can think of that can be considered weird, starting with the Super Acorn. This pretty much turns Mario into a flying squirrel, letting you glide for a short period of time, as well as stick to certain walls when you come in contact with them. There's also the p-acorn power-up that acts similarly to the flying squirrel form, but allows you to infinitely jump in mid-air, so you can stay gliding throughout the entirety of a stage. This is probably the rarest power-up of this specific entry, but it isn't really that uncommon to come across, as you get it a lot in the Nabbit stages. One of the most interesting games in the series is Super Mario 3D World for the Wii U, which really builds off the previous Land predecessor, adding more in-depth levels and a few new crazy power-ups, most notable being the double cherry. This splits Mario off into another controllable version of his same self, which is needed to solve certain puzzles to gain green stars within those stages. Getting a hang of how this works can be a bit tricky, but is a great new mechanic that makes this game feel fresh. The only other one that I feel like is really weird is the Lucky Bell power-up, which is a rare version of the usual Super Bell, transforming you here into a Lucky Cat Mario. The added feature here is that when you ground pound, you turn into an invincible golden statue, which allows you to kill really tough enemies, while also giving you a few coins for your troubles. Kinda strange, but actually kinda cool. Because of the capture mechanic in Super Mario Odyssey that allows you to become some of the enemies from across the franchise, power-ups are rather scarce to come across. But there is at least one in the game that actually could also be considered weird in the Rocket Flower. When this is collected by Cappy, it allows you to reach some incredibly fast speeds, and even run on the side of walls, and over certain usually unwalkable areas, albeit in a bit of an out-of-control state, and only for a short amount of time. The final Mario title we're going to look at in this video is Bowser's Fury, the game mode that was released alongside Super Mario 3D World for the Switch, which has one standout strange power-up in the Giga Bell that transforms Mario into his giant cat version. This Goliath power-up is needed to face off against Fury Bowser, who's really out of control and needs to be defeated to save Lake Lapcat. This definitely is an exhilarating fight every time you face off against this menacing foe, and I hope in the future we see more moments like this specific one. Alright, that's gonna be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy this one. If you did, please leave a like, comment below what you thought about it, and of course subscribe to my channel. Also, please go follow my Instagram at CopyCatGamer. There I upload some cool clips and items from my collection that you won't see anywhere else. Hope you guys all have a good day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!